Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. And joining us in studio, it's it doesn't seem like it's been a month since we've seen you, but I guess it has been. We have City Administrator Carter Napier. Welcome back.
Hi there. Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's always good to see you, and I like that we do these on Wednesday now because we get a chance to talk about whatever happened in the last city council meeting. So, what did you guys do last night?
Well, we had basically two items last night for our work session, and as you know, a work session is a less formal sort of study session that helps us to go over issues in a little more detail in preparation for a formal discussion on the floor. Last night, we took the council out to the baseball, softball complex out at the Field of Dreams and reviewed basically the construction that's going on out there and gave the opportunity for council to ask questions and see what it is that they are concerned about with regard to the project and give them the opportunity to maintain sort of a status of what's going on. So after that, we addressed our agency requests with respect to funding that they would like to receive from the city council for their operations. And typically this would be, nonprofit health and social service type agencies that are in need of some assistance and generally will want to talk to the council about stepping in and being a partner in their operations.
And this would be 1% funds that they would be receiving for these operations?
That's right. Council uses 1% dollars to fund these types of requests. We get, probably about $1 million a year in terms of these requests in the form of an application, if you will. And, council will typically try to do what they can to fund about that amount.
Okay. And anybody in particular that that stands out as far as who has applied so far?
Yeah, we had, last night we had a visit from the Gillette Hockey Club. We had a visit from the Yes House, American Red Cross, a number of entities. We probably last night we visited with about 8 or 9 entities, I should say, and we probably have a list of folks who weren't required to come in the neighborhood of maybe 10 or 15 others.
Oh, okay. So, and I think a lot of people when you think of 1%, you think of infrastructure stuff, which is obviously a big part of it, but it also helps support some of these nonprofit agencies as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's part of the program that council has instituted some years ago with regard to trying to get the 1% dollars to work for the community, as it were. It's a small portion of how much funding we actually get from 1%. We're anticipating probably collecting in the neighborhood of $21 million in fiscal year 15, and so this is approximately a 5% piece of that pie, if you will, that we dedicate to social service agencies.
Okay, and I know the 1% does go up for a vote this fall, right?
Correct.
And I mean now it seems like there hasn't been really an interruption. I guess it's been in place since about the 80s or so.
Yeah, 1976 was when it was first passed, right? And I believe that's correct. I believe it's been in place ever since then. Okay,
and I'm sure we'll probably talk a little bit more about that when the election time comes around.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it seems to be one of those topics that everybody wants to talk about. So another one. We talked about this the last time you were in. There was a little bit of a problem with the funding with the Gillette Avenue construction project. That's getting underway this month.
Right.
What's the update on that?
We anticipate starting a small portion of the Gillette Avenue project on Monday. We won't be necessarily shutting down Gillette Avenue, as it were, in order to get started. But what we are doing is there at the intersection of First and Gillette Avenue, we will be digging in and starting the big storm drainage box that needs to go under the street there. And so the very first portion of that utility, if you will be commenced on April 14th.
Oh, okay. So it seems like, I guess springtime's here. It's that time of year. You got to get started with the construction.
Yeah, we're starting to see frost come out of the ground and everything, and we really want to get on top of this project as early as we can. And certainly starting the 21st, once we get through Easter, we are going to start seeing some dramatic movement in the project as we work our way up First Avenue, and then, of course, from there we'll have a whole bunch of various points and stops and starts and everything else.
Now, if I remember right, the way it's going to work is one block will be shut down, and then the next block will be getting prepared for it but not shut down, right? And then
Correct.
It's kind of leapfrogs.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We don't want to shut down two cross streets to any one block at any time. So, for example, when we start on the First Street block, if you will, between First and Second, as First is shut down, Second will remain open, and when Second gets shut down, Third will remain open or whatever, or First will be open if we're still on the First Street block.
Okay.
So, that's right. We are trying to be as sensitive as we can to maintaining access to all the businesses that are being impacted, and certainly keeping cross streets open as many as possible is obviously very important for that. We can't obviously shut down the alleys either, because backdoor access is going to be really important. So there's a lot of calculation with regard to how we're approaching this, and I think we have a very solid plan in order to make this happen.
Okay, and looks like we might have a call here. I mean, I understand it probably there's a lot of logistics that go into this kind of thing. So I'm sure it's one of those things that you might have to make adjustments along the way as well, but I'm sure you'll be on top of it.
Well, the plan is solid. It's always weather that throws a monkey wrench in the works. That's for sure.
It is Wyoming. Let's take a call. News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Hey, Don, I have a quick question here. What is the total projected cost of the Field of Dreams?
The total projected cost of the Field of Dreams with respect to the phases that we're working on, you mean? Is that what you're saying?
It just from start to finish.
Once the whole 25-year plan is put into shape, it could cost as much as $100 million once it's all installed, all constructed from soup to nuts. So, but we don't anticipate that occurring until the need it presents itself with respect to each of the phases that would be taken on.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Now, just to clarify, that is parts that haven't been approved yet.
That's exactly right. We will not move into the various phases of the Field of Dreams until the community presents the need for whatever phase it is that we would be facing at the time.
So right now, what are we looking at right now as far as what has already been approved and what the construction has been started?
At this point, the only thing that's been approved is 4 softball fields.
Okay.
And so that's all that we're working on right now. And as for the, the forecast on the near horizon, that's all that has been approved or even considered. So if we advance into other phases, it'll be because the entities in the community or the community at large would come forward and say, hey, it's time to look at X.
Right. And what's the approximate price tag for what we have already approved?
We will probably spend at the end of the day, once it's all said and done, $12 million.
Okay.
And that includes all the infrastructure that's been put in the ground, all the trees that have been planted, all the rough grading and the streets at this point and everything else. So the walking path is another big feature out there that's been installed, basically. Once we're done with the 4 fields, it'll probably be in the neighborhood of $12 million.
Okay, because I've heard the $100 million number before, but again, that hasn't even been proposed. I mean, anything beyond this $12 million hasn't even been proposed yet.
Hasn't even been discussed, other than from a master planning standpoint.
Right, that's just one of those things you look at down the road. If the community grows enough that it needs. I mean, if we hit another boom, you never know what could happen.
Yeah. If the need presents itself, then council will have a decision to make at the time. But at this point in time, the only thing that's been approved are the 4 softball fields.
Okay, there you go. Hopefully that answered. Any questions about that.
Sure.
So back to the Gillette Avenue thing. Since we're talking numbers, I mean, have there been any further problems as far as the funding for the Gillette Avenue project?
No. Once the bids came in, that obviously set the map for us, as it were, with regard to how we need to move forward from here. So we're still in negotiating the timeline, if you will, with respect to the project, and that will obviously dictate how the project goes over the next few months. So that's a big important part of this whole effort.
Okay, and we'll take another call before we get to the street sweeping and spring cleanup stuff. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hello, Don.
Hey, what's up?
Here.
Hey, what's up?
Hi there.
The Gillette Avenue project, I think, is something that needs to be done. The heck is there? I know there has to be pipes that come from the founding of the city. But the thing that kind of kills me is the still the dream you mentioned the 4 softball fields. We already have 4 softball fields called Centennial Park that I've never seen really used at all. What's wrong with those? And I'm going to jump off the answer.
Okay, yeah, and that's one of the things I've heard before, as far as back last summer when this stuff was still up for a vote.
Right.
I guess now. I guess those fields were being used, though, right?
Oh yeah, and they're still being used, and they will still be used as we move forward. And so, as far as what the question is, what's wrong with those fields? I don't think there's anything wrong with those fields. I think they're very functional, very usable. That whole park system over there is still a very vital part of the recreation environment. So I don't see those fields going away. The fields that are being constructed now will simply add to what it is that evidently that segment of the recreational community needs.
I guess the only problem was there weren't enough of them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're used quite a bit. It's busy. A good example is with respect to the national tournament that we're going to host this summer. Those 4 fields over there, or whatever amount of fields there are over there at Bicentennial, are just not enough. And so this is just one example where having the extra fields will be really helpful for the program as well as for the community. Now,
will the new fields being built now, will they be in place before the national tournament?
Yes.
Okay, so
that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
As long as the weather cooperates,
Yeah,
which is
it's all weather contingent, isn't it? Yeah.
well. Let's it's going to be 70 degrees today, so I'm not going to say anything to jinx us. So, I mean, since it is springtime, I guess it's time to start cleaning up from the winter time. So, I guess street sweeping is going to be a big part of that.
You bet.
I mean, people are going to be happy about that. Get all the salt off their cars.
Yeah, you bet.
So, tell us a little bit about what's going to be going on with the street sweeping.
It's that time of year where street sweeping takes a higher priority given the nicer weather and the ability for the machines to operate more effectively and so forth. And so we will generally get after it more aggressively as it relates to cleaning the streets and everything else, particularly with regard to a lot of the debris and dirt and so forth that's accumulated over the winter. And in this case, where we've had a fairly aggressive winter, we've had a lot of material applied to the streets around the community, and it all needs to be cleaned up. So we'll be getting after that here in the next few weeks. We'll be coming out with a schedule that will indicate when the street sweepers will be in the various neighborhoods around the community, and that'll be, of course, the cue to the neighbors in the neighborhood to have their cars off the street so we can get a thorough cleaning job done to the streets and move through to the next neighborhood.
And I'm sure we'll probably have them on our website as well. I mean, the city's always good at getting that stuff to us, so we'll have it on our website. I'll mention it on the show as well when we have the each area where you have to keep your car off the street. I don't know if we have a call or not. It might have been one of these situations where it rang one time, and we'll give it a shot though. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to the Field of Dreams. Does he really believe that we need to spend that many millions of dollars on the field? That's one question I have for him. Do you think we need to spend that millions of dollars just to build a baseball field?
Well, the question of whether or not I believe if that dollar amount is necessary, that's what the bids came in at. If we were just constructing fields, perhaps, and not putting in infrastructure and other kinds of things out there, I suppose it wouldn't be as much. But yeah, I mean, that's what the bids came in at. That's where we're at. That's what it's costing. So I'm not sure what element I'm supposed to believe or not believe.
Well, and you guys got to remember, Carter's not an elected. He's just the guy that runs the city.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, let's try one more. We'll get.
No problem.
I promise we'll get to this spring cleanup too.
No problem at all. No problem
News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Hey, you guys hung up. I wasn't
okay.
done yet.
Oh, okay. What's up?
Well, the other question is one of the reasons I believe that's costing us so much is, our mayor, he resigned kind of right after that. Was he a silent partner in all this stuff? Was he part of that? Is that one of the reasons he left? Nobody really dug into it. And that's one of the reasons I heard that there was kind of a little kickback on our other mayor. Is that true? I'll take that off the air.
Yeah, no, that's not true. Yeah, if it is true, that would be a complete and utter surprise to me. So no, I'm not aware of anything like that whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're hearing stuff like that. I mean, I've never heard anything like that. So.
No, I think that's a pretty remote possibility.
Yeah. But there are all kinds of theories abound.
You bet.
Again.
And I appreciate the question. I mean, if that's something that's on people's minds, I would rather they ask it so they can get straight information versus, festering speculation. So, yeah, no, I'm quite certain none of that is happening or took place or whatever.
Okay, well, I probably jinxed us before we went on the air. I said we hadn't gotten any Field of Dreams calls in quite a while.
That's all right.
But
no problem.
I guess it's boom or bust when it comes to Field of Dreams.
That's all
News
right.
Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, what's up?
Just a quick question. Does Carter continue to see our utility rates? Are they going to continue to increase? I know my question is, you always hear this associated with the hospital and such, the rates are lower than anybody else's. Well, that's okay. Why do we have to raise them, I guess? And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is something we talked about last month when I guess the rates were approved. Do you foresee any future increases in that?
Well, it's really interesting what happens over a year's worth of time and so on. I don't know if the caller knows or not, but the water rates, as a matter of fact, have gone 2 years now without any rate increases at all, and that's mostly because the cost of doing business on the water side is not as aggressive as, say, on the power side. On the power side, we have costs that increase fairly aggressively, and projects that we do and everything else that deplete the reserves as well as exceed our ability to keep up with those costs without rate increases. So where you have 4 utilities that we look at every year, some years some of the utilities require rate increases and some years others don't. Waste, water, and power are 2 that did require rate increases this year, and that's only because the cost of doing business tends to go up and the amount of projects that need to be done are involved in that as well, which, by the way, as far as wastewater is concerned, a lot of those projects are offset by 1% dollars and so forth. On the water side and on the solid waste side, those rates were not needed to be increased because our ability to keep up with those costs have been okay with the current rate model. So when you think about those kinds of things, and when we evaluate those, costs of doing business every year, it doesn't always come out that a rate increase is needed. But I certainly can't say that we'll be able to go forever without looking at rate increases for water, for example, from now on.
Well, and I know in this past year, electric prices have gone up all over the country. So I imagine it's probably, but it's one of those things that's you just have to look at every year and take it year by year. Yeah,
you got to look at it every year, and I know that in years past, it had been a practice or a philosophy, if you will, to not raise rates and those kinds of things. And the problem that causes is, it causes the fund with respect to whatever utility we might be talking about to go broke. And then we've got real problems. And then we talk about balloon rate increases, and we certainly want to avoid that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and hopefully we can. But
that's our goal.
Nobody wants to see rates go up.
Nobody likes rates going up, that's for sure. I'm a rate payer too, and I'd just assume not have to pay more money. But unfortunately, in order to keep up with the cost, we got to look at rate increases. Okay, well, let's. The phones are blowing up this morning. Let's take another call. News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Hello, Don, Mr. Napier.
Hi there.
What's up?
So I'm doing all right. So then, what Mr. Napier is saying that the 1% tax that was for the water isn't really going to, that's supposed to be sunset, isn't really going to sunset, and so we're being misled again about that, because when they took or had the election or the vote for the water, 1% on the water, they misled us on that. So I was just wondering what he means by rate increases.
Sure. I appreciate the question. I think what's happening here is we're blending two concepts into one. When I talk about water increases and rate increases and so forth, I'm talking with respect to the water utility that we use currently. The caller is referring to the Madison Waterline project as it relates to a capital project that is taking place right now.
Right.
That tax is going to sunset when those dollars are collected. We are statutorily required to end that tax, if you will. It's a capital tax is what it is. Once the set amount of dollars is collected, and I believe that set amount is $72 million, something in that neighborhood. So we are anticipating, as a matter of fact, that if that tax dollar is collected at the rate that it's currently collected at, that we will likely be able to end that tax program this time next year if it continues at the same trajectory. And so that tax dollar could very well be sunset, as the caller described it, this time next year. So no, we're not talking about having that tax, the capital tax, go on into perpetuity. That will very much end once those dollars are collected. What I'm talking about with respect to rate increases is with regard to maintaining the utility that's already in the ground, already being used, and trying to keep up with the cost of doing that business, separate and apart from the construction that's taking place right now in regards to putting the Madison line in the ground.
And that's your water bill. That's what you're talking about, the water bill that you get.
That's right. The water bill that we get is what we evaluate from a rate standpoint every year.
Okay, and I think I might know where the caller got a little bit confused on that one, because you mentioned 1% dollars being used for some of the water capital projects. But you weren't talking about Madison. You were
No. Yeah. No.
That's a different 1%.
That's a different 1% because there's effectively two 1% in place. Yeah, for lack of a better way to describe it. We've got 1% that deals with repairing streets, repairing water lines, repairing sewer lines, doing Gillette Avenue, and those kinds of things, social service agencies.
Right.
And then we've got the 1% that's dedicated only
to the
Madison water line.
And that goes away when it's paid off.
And that goes away hopefully this time next year, depending on how much is collected between now and then. which, by the way, is about 18 months ahead of schedule. So if we keep our fingers crossed, that tax will go away. And
keep buying stuff locally.
That's right. That local purchasing helps. That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, I even got them a little bit mixed up there for a second, but it is two separate things.
Yeah. And my point that I made earlier with regard to the 1%, the role that 1% has in utility rates is that when it comes to replacing sewer lines, for example, 1% bears the burden of that project. We don't.
And it also helps keep your bills lower.
That's right, because we don't need the rates to try to replace that particular sewer line when 1% is allocated in that direction. So that was my point about utility rates. 1% helps keep the utility rates from having to support those capital projects.
And tourists pay part of that 1%.
Everybody that comes to town and spends $1 here in our community helps support 1% as well as the Madison capital tax.
Okay, because I even completely forgot about the Madison thing until I was in another part of the state over the weekend, and I bought something at McDonald's. It was $1. It was $1.05. I was like, where's that extra? I thought it was supposed to be $1.06, and they don't have that other 1%. Is what it. They have the first 1%, but not the second.
Right. Yeah.
And we won't at some point. It'll eventually go away.
It'll go away. The Madison capital tax will go away, and it's mandated to do so. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll try one more. We'll try one more call.
No problem.
I promise we'll get to spring cleanup in a second, because we're definitely blowing up the phones this morning.
We're good.
News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Hey, Don, I had one quick question here.
Sure, what's up?
Has the city been able to project what our power costs will be if the EPA follows through with their proposed rules?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually do try to follow those regulatory impacts on our utilities, the power utility, of course, most specifically. To be able to tell you here, as I sit here, however, what that looks like and so forth, I certainly can't. What I can say is, as those regulations go up on coal-fired power plants, that particular power source goes offline, and then we are subject and beholden to, natural gas prices. Most of our community might not even be aware that we buy quite a bit of power off the grid in order to supply power here for our community. And so where those regulations affect power plants' ability to produce power, then, of course, we are much more beholden and subject to those price impacts as well, because we probably spend $20 million a year buying power off the grid to keep lights on here in our community. We don't produce as much, enough, I should say, through our power plants that actually are owned by the community to care for our needs exclusively. So the caller is right. Those types of regulations that come down the pipe from time to time, they do have an impact. The short answer to his question is yes, we do watch that, and we try to be very mindful of how that's going to impact our prospectus, our projections, and so on. But as I sit here, I couldn't tell you what that looks like specifically.
It's one of those things you keep an eye on it, but it's like trying to watch a herd of cats. You can keep an eye on it, but you're not really sure where it's going to go in the future.
Well, and we've even got a guy that his job is specifically that, watching what it is that we pay for power that we buy, and keeping a real tight rein on what's going on in terms of the markets and the regulation and the impacts that regulation has on markets and everything else. And as a matter of fact, if it weren't for him, we probably would be in the dark, pardon the pun, on a lot of those issues. So the caller is wise to be concerned about that, as we certainly are as well.
Okay. So one last thing, and it is spring cleanup time, and we've talked about it a couple times before.
Sure.
But just let everybody know how the spring cleanup's going to work this year.
Yeah, we April 14th is the date that we've been able to coordinate with regard to asking the community to put their undesired items of refuse out on the curb, if you will, and we will come around and pick those up without any charge to the community. So April 14th, we're asking that everybody put their stuff out. It may sit there for a few days until we can get into the neighborhood and get those materials. But if everybody will have that out on the 14th, then if we make more progress in one neighborhood and get into another sooner than we thought, then we can go ahead and start picking up those items and getting them out of the way and off the streets. So we're asking everybody observe the same date as it relates to getting those materials out to the curb, and we will come along and we'll come get them. If not on the 14th, certainly soon thereafter.
So it's going back to the old way.
It is going back to the old way, absolutely. We're going door to door, basically, to pick up those items of refuse, and we will take them out of there. The county has been gracious and kind enough to waive tipping fees for the city so that they effectively become a partner in this program as well. And hats off to them for doing so, by the way. And we'll get the neighborhood and the community cleaned up.
And the other thing is, don't put them in the street and don't put them on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Just put them in the grass by the sidewalk.
Well, we really can't go onto private property to retrieve those items.
Okay.
But if we can, obviously, get them from the sidewalk, that's ideal.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't want to block the sidewalk, and we certainly don't want to block lanes of traffic and those kinds of things.
So right by the sidewalk,
it's got to
but
be
not
right
on it.
there, yeah, because we really are not allowed, technically, to enter into a private property to pick up those items.
Right.
There are a few things, too, that we probably ought to be aware of as it relates to what we cannot pick up. We cannot pick up electronics. We can't pick up refrigerators. We're not permitted to pick up tires and fluids, like
motor oil,
used motor oil, and equipment that might have some kind of oil or fluid in it. Cooking oil is another good example. Propane bottles. We are simply not equipped to handle those kinds of items. And so if you bring them out to the curb, they're going to stay on the curb until you take them back into your house or take them to the landfill yourself, because we are not allowed or equipped or whatever to pick up those kinds of things. So 55-gallon drums are not something we pick up. Railroad ties we're not equipped to pick up. Big piles of dirt, we just can't do that kind of stuff. We're not equipped in that regard. But when it comes to carpet, when it comes to other types of appliances like old stoves or old dishwashers or whatever,
refrigerators are because of the Freon.
For refrigerators, because of the Freon.
Right.
That's exactly right. And those need to be prepared in a specific way in order to be disposed of.
And electronics, there's all kinds of stuff on circuit boards that have to be special. Right. But like sofas and chairs and old mattresses and that kind of stuff you can handle.
Well, mattresses actually are too big for us to get in this effort too. However, on May 10th, we will have a stop and drop that will allow us to accept electronics and accept mattresses even on this particular date. So if you are tempted to bring it to the curb on April 14th, please hold off until May 10th for your electronics and mattresses, and we will accept those items in a specific separate activity.
Oh, okay. And I'll make sure we talk about that next time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we have one more. We have time for one more call.
You bet.
News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hi, I was wondering if you drain the tank on like an old lawnmower and there's no oil or fuel in it, you guys pick those up by the curb or no?
Like a push mower?
Yeah.
I guess if we could, the problem with that is we have to verify that there is no fluids in there, and if you're okay with that, and you are willing to drain those fluids into a container that you would take those fluids to be disposed of in a more proper fashion, we would take that lawnmower. Yes.
Okay, there you go. So a push mower, but not a riding mower. That would be too big.
Yeah. Push mowers are what we're limited to.
Okay.
Certainly electric push mowers don't obviously have that same concern, but if gas and oil are drained off of those push mowers, we will gladly accept them.
Okay, well, there you go. And we're completely out of time. I probably have enough breaks to take us to the top of the hour, but I want to thank you again, Carter Napier, City Administrator, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you again in about a month.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. News Talk 1270 KIML will be actually. This is probably going to be 2 or 3 breaks strung into one, so I might not see you until after 9 o'clock. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Not insulting guests since 2013. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.